So welcome and thanks for joining us either online or in person. If you are online and you have any problems, you can't hear a video or you can't see anything, please just either unmute and shout out or put it into chat. We have a colleague here, Karina, who will be monitoring the chat. And if you haven't found the session notes, I hope there's a link in chat. If you wouldn't mind signing into the session notes, that would be fantastic. All right, I think I'll hand it over to Jens at this point.
Thanks, Stephanie, and welcome everybody to this session about the future of meetings. And greetings, whatever the time of day is. Here, I think we're already in the future. It's Friday morning, and I think that's a good segue to talk about the future of meetings. Let's go to the next slide.
Yeah.
So this gives you an idea of what our hub looks like. It's an experimental setup. We weren't sure what was expecting us, but so far it's gone really well. And we will tell you more about our experience in the course of this session and discuss this with you. Next slide. Before we dive into the session, I would like to acknowledge and celebrate the first Australians on whose traditional lands we meet and pay our respects to their elders past and present. And I would like to extend this to the First Nations of the Pacific Northwest and to any First Nations people joining us today on this session. And let's go to the next slide. So what we're going to do today is we're in the middle of welcome and introductions, and we will start with 3 lightning talks. One we will show you as a video from the group The Future of Meetings, Community of Practice. Then I will give a short presentation on research meetings and the need for more than one mode of participation. And I will explain what I mean by modes of participation. And then Stephanie will talk about the experience we've had so far with hybrid and hub meetings. And that will then lead us in a discussion of of meetings, and then we'll wrap up with takeaway messages and some closing remarks.
And possibly some next steps.
And yes. Okay. So to get us started, Stephanie, what do we do with this?
Okay, so I will just have to go over here and hope that that works. Takes
So
a second. Okay, can you see a Mentimeter with a code? Yeah, if you wouldn't mind scanning that.
Now you're allowed to take out your phones.
Okay, so we've got a couple of people. Excellent. And a lot of thumbs up.
Okay, let's get started with the Menti.
Okay.
How
So
did you
first
travel
question
here?
is, how did you travel to this event? By which we mean the biggest part of the most distance. Okay, 2 people joining from home, 5 people by plane. Okay. So no train, which is less surprising. For the person putting in other, if you could either maybe speak up or put it into chat or put it in the notes, whatever you prefer, that would be really cool to know. Because I was trying to think of all the different options, but I'll probably missed one. Sorry?
Swam.
Yeah, I was thinking both, maybe not. Okay, so most people have indeed traveled by plane, and we have a couple of people joining from home, and the rest seems like local transport, so car, bicycle, and bus. So just to give us an idea, roughly how long did it take you to get to where you are at the moment? So if you're joining from home, I'm assuming that's basically not much. Okay. Okay, so so 5 joining from home, and that's cool. So that's no commute time. and followed by between less than 2 hours, which I assume is more like local, and 6 to 12 hours. And one per person took 12 hours or more, I feel for you. And 2 people had sort of a middle travel time. Okay, so slight change of tack. What do you like about attending a conference? And that can be virtual or physical in person. I mean, this is assuming that you like attending a conference, admittedly. So if you don't like it, you can say I don't like it. But hopefully, yep, networking, building ideas. Abnormal. Okay, talk, collaboration in person, collaboration. Associated vocation. We should come to IDW in Brisbane in October. Discussion, inspiration, meeting new colleagues, which would probably fit into, meeting people, that would fit into networking. Learn what others do. So exchange of ideas, I guess. So the biggest things are really connecting with other people, networking with other people, getting inspiration, learning new things, and generally meeting people. So the big thing really is about, I guess, connecting with other people. You agree?
I think that, yeah.
And community is there as well, which is great.
Social.
Yeah.
Some
Okay.
find it relaxing.
Oh, really? I didn't see that.
I didn't find this conference relaxing.
Conspiracy.
Could be after party.
Cool. Informal discussions is formal. So there's a lot about informal and connections, making connections. All right. So have you ever not been able to attend a conference? And if so, why? So was there a conference that you would have liked to attend but weren't able to for whatever reason? Yeah, maybe. So carrying responsibility, cost of attendance, ban on federal travel, no funding, lack of funds, funding. So funding seems to be a big theme, not surprisingly. Other commitments, government travel restrictions, red tape. No permission from employer, not approved. COVID, RDA Melbourne, I feel you. I was in Melbourne. Yeah, we were the organizers. That was a very painful time. Travel costs, time, yeah, lack of funding, sick, too many other work commitments, too much time away from home, COVID, yeah. So basically, red tape, bureaucracy, permissions, travel approval, sickness, illness, other commitments, and lack of funding seem to be, or distance, yeah. So that probably means either too costly or too much time or a combination thereof. Mobility issues, yeah. Funding. Oh, press festival responses. I've never tried that. So I probably shouldn't have done that. Oh, there we go. And I would classify COVID with health reading.
No.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's true.
Pandemic.
I mean,
Yes.
you personally could have had COVID and not traveled, which
Yeah.
would be help.
I take your point. Okay. All right, looks like I grouped it roughly as the AI did. Sorry. And just a question, do you expect that traveling to conferences will become more difficult for you? And for whatever reason, which could be more red tape, less funding, or any other, expecting a baby, any other things?
Well, Who are the 4 lucky people? Put your hands up.
Okay. 5 lucky people.
Wow.
Okay.
I mean, that's a good reality check to see where, when you only have certain voices in the room, the concerned ones.
Well, I said, yes, I'm going to have trouble, but not because, but for personal commitments, not because of work commitments. Work would have me traveling all the time if they had their way. So it's interesting.
Yeah, so that's actually quite a nuanced picture that we need to dive into.
Yeah. Okay, that was it. So thank you for participating in the Menti, and we'll just go. Are there any questions at this point, or anything you would like to say? So if you're online, you can either put that into chat, or you can also speak up. Do we have anything in chat?
Yes, someone said I'm pretty free to pick, but nowadays I'm not as eager to travel as I was 20 years ago.
Yep.
2 people ticked the one, it's impossible now. It can't get any more difficult.
Okay, that's a reason to say no, but yeah, no, doesn't sound like travel is a possibility anyway. Yeah.
We do have a question from the room.
It's Susan Shingledecker. It's more of a comment. I think, I was one of those no votes that you thought was interesting. And I do think there's something about age and career stage as to, is travel going to be harder for you or not, right? I was talking to a community fellow who was here this morning with his wife and his 1-year-old baby, which I said was amazing. And when I had 1-year-old babies, conference travel was really hard. But I now have 13 and 16-year-olds, and I'm moving. I do see this window of my career where I can put my career first and I can travel where I need to travel, but I realize that that is a finite window as I get older, because I think that the physical constraints of travel will then become hard. So I think there's probably I don't know, to me there's an age component of that, irregardless of the limitations that my employer or my funders might put on travel.
Yeah, and I think that is that window of opportunity, if you like, is different for everybody. And some people might not have it because while their kids may have grown up, they may now have to look after aging parents, for example, and then can't travel for that reason. So I know a couple of people who fall into that category. But you're certainly right. There is a window of opportunity where things are easier. And I think a lot of ECRs, early career researchers, technically, would like to travel, don't necessarily have the family commitments, but they may lack the funding or the opportunities through their work. So there's different things that impact on your ability to travel.
Yeah, it's kind of the symptom is the ability to travel, but the causes are varied.
Any other comments from the room? Any other comments from online? No, look like it. Okay, so what we wanted to do now is show you a video which explores some ideas and some options for how events could look like. So this is about 5 minutes, I think.
Yep.
And we hope this will work. We have tested it, but let us know if you can't hear or see anything.
Hi everyone, we're here from the Future of Meetings, or TFOM, to share with you some thoughts about the ways we might effectively meet and collaborate in future. We're a community of practice focused on experimentation and exploration, and we see online meeting technologies as a critical way of improving the accessibility, inclusivity, and sustainability of how we work and interact. If we can get this right, then we open up opportunities to collaborate with people all around the world, breaking down barriers and borders that have existed for centuries.
Meeting in person and meeting fully online are two extremes of a spectrum of interaction modes that both have unique advantages and disadvantages. Hybrid models such as the hub and spoke system attempt to provide the best of both worlds by gathering smaller groups in person and connecting these groups as seamlessly as possible online. At TFOM, we've experimented across the meeting format spectrum, including online only, online first with hub days, blended modes, more traditional hybrid, and virtual conference exhibitions. Our various published accounts of these meetings and conferences show that the most important thing is to fit the format of the meeting to its desired outcome, making sure you consider the needs of all attendees. Hybrid modes inevitably create two different types of experience for people attending the same event, meaning that this format alone cannot really solve the challenges of equitably connecting people. One of the most promising of our experiments involved a series of virtual reality events dedicated to a discussion of science for the public good. Using a fully immersive virtual reality platform offered the chance to bring people together in a way that felt familiar, but with opportunities to go beyond the norm.
Going online does not have to be about compromise. Technology such as virtual spaces allows us to meet and chat together as we would in person, just like we're doing now. Leveraging the online nature of the space also allows you to design experiences that are not possible in person, such as exploring an asteroid or fearlessly handling a digital twin of a piece of very delicate equipment. And when work is done, you can head to the golf course in an underground virtual lair or battle demons in a dungeon with your team. Adoption of new technology does have some challenges, both in terms of accessibility and experience with using different systems. However, these barriers are far less than gathering a globally distributed group of people into a single room.
So, where to from here? Well, there are no silver bullets to solve how we interact when we're distributed. Instead, what's needed is for communities to be creative in their approaches and try new things, experimenting in what works and sharing lessons learned with the global community. We've had literal millennia to figure out what might work best in person, and we've only had the ability to meet online for a few years. So it's definitely a case where we need to explore and try new things to optimize how we interact in an era of technology.
From our perspective in TFOM, there are so many exciting opportunities that lie ahead, and we look forward to seeing the outcomes of your future experiments in this area.
Hello, I'm Ron Ekus, and we are gathered here at the Virtual Parks Radio Telescope to represent the Future of Meetings community. But how about we move up into the dish instead? With this video, we'd like to get you thinking about some what-if scenarios when it comes to planning the future of our meetings, conferences, and collaborations. Only your imagination need limit the spaces where we can meet.
What if we could meet and collaborate with people from all around the world, regardless of where you're physically located?
What if technology allowed the same togetherness with others informally, being together socially even while at a distance?
What if you could give a talk and have all the benefits of being on stage, but with an audience distributed around the world?
What if we could link real data to virtual objects and bring new ideas to life for collaborators from around the world?
What if technology could allow you to experience different places and cultures with your friends and colleagues without ever having to travel anywhere?
Avete mai immaginato di fare una presentazione nella vostra lingua preferita e che tutti i partecipanti la potessero seguire nella loro? What if you could give a talk in your preferred language and everyone watching could experience it in theirs?
What if we could meet in a place that goes beyond being there, somewhere humans cannot reach?
So that was a video just showing a couple of the things that the Future of Meetings group, TFOM, has been experimenting with. And while a lot of the people in there were actually quite young, one of the main people in the group is actually retired. So he was the one who built the GatherTown telescope model. Okay. Any questions or
there are some comments in the chat. So John, I don't know whether you want to come off mute, but he's saying, what if all these questions miss the real point?
Okay. Can you elaborate on that?
No matter what these technologies can enable, it enables only a part of the physical experience. And sometimes that's the most important aspect of meetings where you travel to meet people in person. You know, the going back to the communication bandwidth question, you know, the highest bandwidth is when you're actually there in person, face to face, and there's no way, at least not in my lifetime, that these virtual technologies are going to enable that. So yes, lots of collaboration could be enabled by all of these virtual technologies, but that's not why I go to meetings.
Okay, that's a valid point and one that we hear quite a bit. Interestingly enough, so for example, the TFOM people, I have known them since 2020, I think was when the first symposium was. And I've been engaging with them ever since. I have only ever met one of them in person. And we have written papers together, presented at conference together, worked on stuff together, but they also play a lot of, you know, virtual mini golf and whatever. They're a real group of friends with a very, very active Slack community. And they meet up every week or two and doing online virtual activities. I think I agree that it's not quite the same as being together in a place where you can share food, build trust and all those things, but you can do a lot of these things online, and these people probably wouldn't be hanging out every week together, because as you may have seen, there were people in Perth, in Sydney, in Canberra, and these are actually quite big distances, so they wouldn't be doing this.
But let's come back to that later in the discussion, because I will elaborate a bit more on this in my presentation. Cool. But were there other comments?
I don't know who it is. ESOED.
Emmanuel. One with John. Nothing beats reality if it comes to immersion.
Well, let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to go to your slides?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I'll just.
You can just do it.
I add something from the room.
Yep.
Yep.
So it's Matt Harrison, AWS. Some of you know me. So I think what's interesting is that I can imagine that, you know, that joining from the hub as you have this time has engaged you more in what's happening here. I think it is unfortunate that there's not.
You muted yourself.
You muted yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, unfortunately, yes. Unfortunately, there are only those of us here who probably have a vested interest in this kind of either this kind of technology or indeed, you know, who go to a lot of meetings. I think I think that one of the so that kind of you having an influence on what happens here maybe is much more challenging. And I completely get the kind of water cooler conversations. You know, some of the best conversations I've had here this week have been completely fortuitous. I've just been standing next to people queuing for food or whatever. So yeah, those kind of things are the real opportunity of being able to come to a conference, but at the same time to have other things. I'm standing here and I can't remember the main point about what I want to make, so maybe I'll after 3 days of talking to people solidly, my brain has gone a little, but so I may come back with the actual point I wanted to make, which was just on the tip.
While you're thinking of that, Matt, Sarah's put something in the chat. I think it's much easier to have productive virtual interactions when you've met folks in person before.
I would agree with that, Leslie. Also, this is Susan. The one part of the video that it broke my soul a tiny little bit was talking about experiencing cultures in a fully virtual world. And I was like, oh, that's my age showing. Like, I mean, when I think about I was like, I see so much potential, and I love the effort that you guys have put into this. And, you know, there's multiple there's multiple trade-offs, right? And the ability for you to be connected with us and our messages to be making it, halfway around the world is incredible. But my goodness, one day I really hope I'm traveling to Australia to experience your culture in person. And I think there's no replication there's no duplicating that part of it, right? Like last night, this is bragging and I apologize, but having salmon and oysters on the waterfront in Seattle, like that's part of why I travel and why I love to travel. And so I think there are huge benefits to both models and trying to thread the needle and find ways to have the best of both worlds. But I really don't think you can experience culture in a virtual capacity in that way.
I think you're right, that there are people who will never be able to experience that because they won't be able to get a visa to travel to Australia. They'll never have the money, or they'll never have the opportunity, or they, are disabled and won't be able to take on such a long travel. I've got a 96-year-old aunt who's not going to get on a plane to visit me, unfortunately, from Germany. So I think being in person is probably still the ideal, but there are people for whom that's not possible. And then what would be the next best thing, I think, is one of the things.
Yeah, and I'll just shamelessly take this as a segue to my talk to talk about the modes of participation, that there are more than 2 modes. There's not only in person and not only Zoom. And so the question that I like to ask in this context is, did you watch the Paris Olympics? Because about 1 billion people worldwide watched the Summer Olympics 2024 in Paris, and about 770,000 went there. Not even 1 million went to Paris. So not even a promille of the audience went to the entire event. That's not mentioning individual sports events at this larger event. So the audience on site was actually tiny compared to the global audience. But there were different modes that people could watch the Olympics. You could go to public viewing events, you could watch at home with your family and friends, or go to your local pub, or just watch it on your mobile phone. But then, and the really important point to me here is that those modes are all different. And it's important to me to also stress that they're not equal, but none of them were worthless. They all allowed a global audience to watch this major sports event through these different modes. And so looking back over the past couple of years, we thought, well, what we experienced during the COVID pandemic in 2020 to 2022 was this push of conferences to online modes, and the participation was high initially because there was no alternative, and since then it has dropped a lot. Incidentally, in the European Geosciences Union, the virtual participation has then gone up again, in the last years. I won't go into detail of that, but what we see is that only a small fraction of meeting organizers have made an effort to develop and adopt new formats that offer value to online participants. So, and the key word to me here is value. It's not just offering Zoom at inflated prices, but a really valuable experience. And conference organizers often have spent very little effort and creativity to develop new formats of what I would call mixed mode events. So I think we all know why this is a problem, because reverting to in-person only events like Goldschmidt event, the Goldschmidt conference, that misses the benefits of mixed mode event formats. It disregards that the environmental cost of getting to the conferences and hosting the conference is quite large, and those formats favor those who can afford the high costs, the time commitment of international travel, those who are likely to receive travel visa, and those who are already advantaged. So the question is, what can be done to offer something that is better than Zoom fatigue, that offers a valuable alternative? And so for me, the question, and for the future of meetings, is there more than one way to do this? And again, acknowledging that not all modes are equal, but offering mixed modes of participation can make events more accessible, because there are many opportunities now to innovate by blending in-person, hybrid, and online formats, and adopting new technologies that we've seen in the video, like virtual reality. We're experimenting now with local or regional hubs where participants can gather to discuss and network. And examples that we know about are the 2024 Astronomical Society of Australia annual scientific meeting, and this one. And I think there will be more meetings coming up with regional hubs, but that's a bit uncertain because nobody's thought about this in great detail. So one of those possible formats are spatially distributed international conferences to bring people together in person while limiting long distance travel by organizing a number of hubs that are linked together through streaming technologies. This is what the Astronomical Society of Australia did last year for the first time, which was an online first format, plus a local hub day. Here in this format, we tried something else where the main event is in Seattle, but we have this local hub in Canberra, and we also have people in Australia joining us from other places, joining our Australian side program that we've organized to make the best use of the time that we spend here. And then there's this question about cost. And I've heard many times that conference organizers said it's too expensive because you have to organize 2 conferences. And if there are only few people joining the so-called hybrid or virtual part, that is not worth the effort and the money. But what I've also heard from conference organizers is that local tourism boards discourage mixed mode events. They are incentivizing conference organizers and venues to get as many bums on the seat as possible. And on the other hand, I've heard from the CEO of Copernicus, the organizer of the European Geosciences Union, which you know is an event of 20,000 participants annually, that they've done financial modeling, and it shows that running a virtual component adds only 5% additional cost, but can bring up to 20% more participants. So the innovation in online modes can actually grow the number of online participants without adding that much extra costs. that extra cost can be covered by registrations. And in the end, most of us are scientists and we should experiment. We are creative people and we should experiment with new formats for better results. And so we should look at, and we will just discuss this today, what is the aim of the meeting? So what is the appropriate format for what we're trying to achieve? Which mode work for which format? What is required to make a specific mode work? What is the critical mass of people you would need in one location or one mode to make a specific mode work? And also to think about how can we measure and determine whether a specific mode is useful for what we try to achieve. So the QR code on the right-hand side takes you to the Future of Meetings webpage if you want to learn more. And to conclude, there are many opportunities to innovate by blending in-person, hybrid, and online formats and adopting new technologies in mixed mode events. And not all modes are equal, and it will require our creative thinking about the goals of the event to enable worthwhile, accessible modes. Moving back to in-person only conferences is not sustainable. The environmental cost of travel will become prohibitive, and it's not equitable, and it favors the more wealthy parts of the research community. And now in the new global political environment, we also see other limitations. So those are things we want to discuss today, and I'll hand to Stephanie for the next lightning talk.
Thanks. Thanks, Jens. There were a couple of comments and questions in the chat. So
do we want to start with Susan answering John's question? John asked in chat if Susan's experience with planning with ESIP matched the financial modeling that Jens just presented.
It's not a simple answer, but the costs we face for increased AV support and people in rooms to monitor Zoom is a huge additional cost. I don't have a percentage number. We probably could get it, looking at our AV quotes and say, okay, what would we strip out if this were not a hybrid meeting? I think it comes down to the level of polish versus scrappy of your meeting, right? And ESIP tends to be pretty scrappy. We used to be even scrappier. We used to provide all of our own projectors, and our staff of 5 was crawling under tables and hooking up cables, and but when you're charging people a registration fee, there is an expectation on what is the quality of that experience. And so, like this meeting, you may all have noticed in the plenaries, when our registration was very low, I was trying to save money at every corner because ESIP is losing a significant amount of money on this meeting. And so a huge thing that I could save, I think by cutting the camera in the plenary room, I was saving $8,000. But then Steve Diggs said, well, I got a camera and I got an owl and I could hook that up. And right, so the scrappy came through, which is amazing and I love it. But it's like, well, can I next time, do I say, well, I expect Steve's gonna offer that? And so it's interesting. But for us, the cost is very high, and that's why the decision I made, and it doesn't have to be the decision going forward, but the decision I made was we cannot afford to do 2 hybrid meetings a year. A lot of people have said, oh, please bring back the in-person January meeting in DC. And I've said we can't afford 2 hybrid meetings. We can afford 1 virtual and 1 hybrid. And I agree with the point that I don't think going back to in-person only, that feels very exclusionary and leaving people out. So that was why we made that decision. It was very much a financial decision and an accessibility decision. But yeah, our costs on AV are astronomical. I think our original quote for this meeting for our AV support was over $90,000. So that goes back to polished versus scrappy, and that's a fraction compared to what AGU pays, right? But that's why they don't do hybrid in every session now, right? Like they pick and choose. A lot of virtual conferences have like a few sessions are virtually accessible. So there was another point I was going to make and I lost it, Matt.
one point on the positive side, because this was an unusual meeting that we had much less attendance than we originally hoped because but at the last minute, when we got approvals, we did have a big bump in virtual attendance. And so we have people attending who would not be attending at all. And it's been good. You know, ESIP does good hybrid meetings as far as it goes. So yeah, there is a trade-off though. But I was questioning those EGU numbers too, particularly the cost numbers.
Well, the cost numbers, what you need to know maybe is that the city of Vienna and the conference venue are very happy to have AGU there. So they give them quite favorable terms. And anybody who's ever organized a side meeting at AGU know that you can basically buy your AV equipment and dump it afterwards versus the cost of renting it from them. I think I'll be bold here and say there's also quite a bit of price gouging on the side of the providers that make this excessively expensive. So that's why the EGU example is different, because they have friendly providers that don't try and gouge the price.
And I know that TFOM have experimented with owls in settings for conferences, and that seemed to work quite well and was a lot, they incurred a lot less cost. So whenever we say to them, oh, it's got to be really expensive, they say, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, well, that's sort of, I think, Susan's point about Scrappy, and I think and honestly, ESIP did Scrappy well, but it is exhausting on the staff. And I think we will be looking at maybe not Scrappy, but certainly more economical approaches, you know, going to universities rather than big hotels, things like that. So truth is somewhere in between, I think.
I'd just like to reinforce what Jens said about AV price gouging, because as some of you know, I seem to be a perennial conference organisers, and the AV costs vary from venue to venue, and they are excessive in some venues. Like we were comparing the costs of the Brisbane hotel versus a Melbourne one, and it was just excessive what Brisbane was charging, and you couldn't see the rationale for it. So maybe it's the AV people we need to start working on. Anyway, back to Jens. Sorry, that's just me on my hobby horse.
Were there any other questions in the chat? In the room.
Phoebe has said, I wonder if there's something that will change. This is something will change with future events. Many venues that aren't built for hybrid events, which is part of what makes them expensive. I was just going to speak from my perspective. I carried the equivalent of an hour. It was an hour all the way over to Germany recently because I didn't know whether we were going to have the right facilities in the room with me, but it was pretty easy to put in my suitcase. And I travel with carry-on. In the end, we didn't need it. But like, you know, the kit is relatively small. Like maybe we need to work out how to have more organisations around the community that have the kit that can be lent out.
So you couldn't see that was Karina.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think you're off.
Maybe yeah.
We haven't got how this hub meeting room positioning works, so you can see us all.
So I think the setup here is also a little bit scrappy, but it has been
It's
functional. Yeah, it has been working.
And thank you so much to Susan and Alicia for getting us the recordings from your morning session so we can play them as a group in the afternoon.
Okay, I think that's probably a segue to the next bit. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about hybrid and hub meetings and the experiences we've had with them. Please, everyone here in the room and everyone over there, jump in if you would like to comment or add something. It's not meant to be super formal. So, I mean, again, some of the drivers for virtual and hybrid events, there's an increasing awareness that in-person only meetings are not inclusive, not environmentally friendly, or have all kinds of other reasons for people not being able to attend them. So there's a bit of a danger of entrenching disadvantage. I think one of the big things that really drove forward a lot of the advances we've seen, and it was COVID, because in 2020 and also still 2021 and to a lesser degree 2022, organizers basically had a choice, in particular in the early days, cancel or try and do something virtual. I was one of the people, and Karina, in fact, come to think of it, we basically changed the Research Data Alliance plenary from fully in person with a little bit of virtual attendance to fully virtual, and it actually worked really well. But it was a very short decision because we had the conference planned for March 2020. It was cancelled 6 days before. So we had the advantage. A lot of the possible participants were a very captive audience because they were at home, they were in lockdown, they didn't have to go anywhere. In fact, they couldn't go anywhere. And they didn't have to take kids to school because there was no school. So they basically sat at home. We had over 900 registrations for that plenary. And I remember Jens had a BOF with 150 people. It's like, it's never been happening before. And I think the other thing was during that time, Zoom evolved from being something that people like geeks use to something very mainstream. So a lot more people gained experience in Zoom. I remember in March 2020, I was still teaching people who had been around RDA for years how to use Zoom and how to share their screen. These days, everyone can do it. So there was a big leap forward, I think, in particular with Zoom. So I think some of the things we've learned over the last 2 years, and just to explain, I was involved with the Research Data Alliance for 15 plenaries, no, 17 plenaries actually, I think. So while I wasn't the main organizer, I participated in all of them and then moved from basically in person with a little bit of virtual to a situation where they now alternate virtual and hybrid. But what we've learned over time, and also in other conferences that shifted to virtual or hybrid, people who attend remotely, there's a significant difference in how they can attend very often. So people very often still have their day job. So because they're not traveling, they're not taken out of the work environment, they're still in their work and family and whatever environment. So they still have their day job and their work and other commitments that they have to meet. Time zones don't really help you there. So for some of us here, attending a 7 a.m. live session just wasn't working because people had other things they needed to do at that time.
Maybe just to check. Yeah? So for me, this would have been 5 a.m.
Yes.
I said, no,
sorry.
I'm not doing that. So I'll relocate myself to a more favorable time zone, but not cross the Pacific.
Yeah. So there's a lot of issues there. And as we've already heard, and I think that's probably a lot of people, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people miss the networking aspect of conferences. And on the other hand, if you're in a virtual or hybrid meeting, it is so much harder to engage virtual participants because very often the networking and the poster sessions are where people meet in person and chat, and posters are great conversation books and all that. And you get talking and you start sharing ideas and it moves from there. But a lot of the time, if you have a conference that you attend virtually, a lot of people will go to the talks and then there will be a virtual networking thing, and people will go, nah, enough. I can drink my coffee on my own. Or very often, you know, the lunch break that is offered for networking, even virtually, might be someone's 5 a.m. or 5 p.m. and they're just not available or not in the mood to join it. One thing we also noticed is, and I've seen that in RDA and in ESIP, there's a lot of breakouts in virtual sessions, so breakout rooms. And that's great. I personally love interactive sessions with breakouts and talking to people in small groups, but some people absolutely hate them and will leave immediately as soon as the breakout starts. So we've seen sessions where we had 35 people online, and once we started breakouts, we had like 10 because everyone else just ran. And it's like, okay, I get it. It just puts people on the spot even more than if you are in a room where you can just leave sort of unobtrusively or just sit in the background. The other thing that was something I think I learned personally from the Research Data Alliance plenaries, where we experimented with different conference platforms. And the conference platform or app provided can be great or it can be not. So a conference platform that works well can bring people together across the virtual in-person divide. And I've actually been involved in starting RDA working groups with people I have never met, just because I saw a post on a conference app community board where someone said, is anyone else interested in this topic? And we'll have a meetup then. And I just joined it, and all of a sudden I'm a co-chair of an RDA working group with people I've never met. So these things can actually happen, and RDA uses a conference app called Hoover, which works quite well, where people can actually organize a meetup. There's posts about their pets. There's, is anyone interested in talking about this? There's article sharing and things like that. So that actually works quite well, but not everyone attending the conference or registered for the conference uses it. So one specific type of meeting, hybrid meeting we wanted to talk about is a hub meeting. And this is just the definition. So the idea is that you basically have people at different locations. And what you're doing is having several potential mini events that connect to a major event, or you can have equal sized or equal hubs that just work together as units. So basically each hub is in essence its own physical meeting, but is also part of another more significant, often larger virtual meeting or larger meeting. And that can actually be quite an engaging interactive meeting format. So we've tried that out for ESIP with the hub here in Canberra. So we currently have 8 people, I think.
8 people in the room.
Yeah. So the idea of doing this was for us, first of all, for us locally here to participate in the ESIP meeting, but also have some local connections and some local activities and networking. We wanted to explore what such a hub model could look like. We wanted to capture some lessons to inform future hybrid events, which would include, say, ESIP, but also possibly AGU, which is a different scale as far as I understand. We wanted to feedback our experience and maybe some recommendations to ESIP. And also we wanted locally to network with colleagues across organizations and locations, because although we're all in Canberra, I'm normally in Melbourne, Jens is normally in Perth. I think everyone else is local, but not from the same organizations necessarily. So I think most here in the room knew each other to some extent, but so I was the one probably knew least. So yeah, we wanted to just make some connections across organizations and also locations here, while sort of not having to travel all the way. So just for the logistics, we had about 8 participants in Canberra. We also had one person who I think is normally in Canberra, but happens to be
she's always in
Melbourne. So we had one person in Melbourne. 2 of the 8, Jens and I, traveled to the hub from different locations. So ESIP very kindly provided for us, overnight sessions, which were your morning sessions at the start of our next day, so we could then watch them. So what we do is we come here in the morning, we participate in live sessions as possible, and then had a bit of a break, discussed what we saw. If we watched different sessions in smaller groups, we'd come back and report back about it, have some discussions. And then we also spend a bit of time talking about the hub itself. So trying to work out what worked, what could be improved, what could we do differently, what are ideas if we want to do another hub meeting. So in terms of the connection with the main hub in Seattle, so time zones, of course, are not fantastic. So the 2 p.m. session in Seattle is 7 a.m. for us. So we thought about doing that here at the office, but that would have been not working for most people. So we thought, okay, let's do that at home from your own location if you can, and 1 per day as a group. And then we would come together and decide which of the recordings we wanted to watch, and then have discussions about them as a group. We had local breakout rooms, joint parallel sessions when needed, and we also tried to communicate a little bit back to you via the session notes, although we weren't sure necessarily if session conveners would notice if someone would put something there basically a day after that run their session. that wasn't quite clear to us. But we tried to add some comments to some session notes. The other thing we tried to do is raise a little bit of awareness of our hub. So you may have noticed maybe that a Canberra hub popped up in some of your sessions. So we tried to, whoever, we're using actually my account here, but I've always renamed myself in Zoom to Canberra Hub to try and show who we are. And also, if I join a session without my video on, there's a little photo of the hub here shown as my avatar. And I've also posted a couple of things on Slack, even a photo from my hotel window and stuff like that, just to raise a bit of awareness and to show that we are also a physical location with way fewer people, but still, yeah, we just wanted to raise a little bit of awareness. So this is definitely the point where everyone else can please jump in. So we had a bit of a chat, and in fact, there's some, we put some post-it notes to paper here as well, and we took some notes in Google Docs. So I think what seems to have worked was like everyone here appreciated having other people to interact with. And in fact, even the virtual participant in Melbourne who joined us for a bit yesterday, she really liked the opportunity to interact with us as a hub, even via Zoom. She said, oh, this is better than just me watching this from my office. We basically shared the recording in a Zoom, which got a little bit better. So we could also chat about it while we were watching with her. The hub with its 8 people was small enough that we didn't incur additional costs because ARDC provided the room, AWS through Karina kindly provided catering, but it was big enough to make the networking and the exchange of ideas worthwhile. And I think we also had a little bit of diversity in the people here. So we had different things, different perspectives to share, which seemed to be good. So this is probably more, yeah, Jens and I think talked about it, and Leslie. About 10 people seems to be a good size, because if you have 50 people, then all of a sudden you're organizing your own little conference, you need a bigger venue, you need money for catering, etc., etc. So this was a little bit scrappy as well, I would say.
But it worked.
It certainly worked. We set up a planned schedule that was a little bit like the conference. So we said, okay, we'll meet at 9 o'clock for the live session, then we have a half-hour break, then we'll watch the recording, etc. So we tried to schedule it, and then we'll have a lunch break. So we tried to schedule it like a real conference, so it felt like a real thing, if that makes sense. Though we wouldn't say, oh, no, it's now 12 o'clock, we have to watch the next recording if there was a good discussion going. So we pushed that out, of course, but there was a bit of a schedule to it. And of course, as most people here had their own work and outside of work commitments, they were able to drop in and out as needed. So that actually happened, and I think that worked okay. Don't know if anyone in the room would like to comment anything.
I think it worked well, and as you just said, we still had external commitments, and just being able to go into or go back to an office or provide offices for those people that weren't from ARDC to go and have a meeting, and that just so we have this major room at ARDC which takes about 15 people, but we also were able to borrow rooms where say only 2 or 3 wanted to watch a particular recording. Well, they went into that room, or in another room we had, I think one stage we had 3 groups looking at 3 different sessions. So it was due to Susan and Alicia providing us the recordings, and then as a team we said, all right, let's listen to that one, let's listen to that one. And then particularly with one of them, because Karina was the co-organiser of one with Matt Harrison, and so when we did the recording of that, she took over as our local chair of that session. And it was, I mean, that was just another variant. We've tried lots of variants, but yeah, I think we're happy. Keep going.
Okay. So some suggestions for improvement. So I definitely had square eyes by the end of that too. So I think more off-screen and outside break times. So we actually on day 1, a couple of us went outside with a plate of bickies and just talked a lot about the hub and what had worked and what hadn't, just outside in the sun. That was great. Yesterday, I personally didn't get out of the building between 9 a.m. and 5:30 or 5 o'clock when the building locked. So I think that is something where we have to be more mindful of that and make sure that we actually do get time out and time not watching a big screen. One of the things we brainstormed about was adding local content. So, I mean, a lot of people would say, all right, why would I come to a hub if I can watch it from my home with no commute and no travel time? Again, the sort of networking is one aspect, but also we thought about, you know, if we have some local content, for example, if we have 10 people who may not all know each other, we do a special session at the beginning where we say everyone does 2 minutes about, okay, who am I? What am I currently working on? What am I trying to get out of this? What am I interested in? And just have a bit of, try it like a conversation hooks, or even do a little poster session. You know, everyone puts a small poster up and maybe talks about that for a minute, and then you can talk to people about that. Having local speakers, so having Karina here sort of guiding us through this session was quite valuable. So we could also have local speakers that then feed back to the main hub or other hubs, for example. We could have done a little bit more social networking and maybe organized breaks slightly differently. We could also have done, say, a site visit. You know, there are people here from NCI. I mean, Leslie lives there, I think, but I've never been there, so it might have been interesting to just have a look at some things and vice versa. You know, stuff like that. It may or may not make sense to do that, but it's things we can think about. The other thing that might be nice is to have more interaction with the main site, synchronously and potentially asynchronously. So Slack seemed a good way of doing that. Question is how many people actually use the Slack on a regular basis. I wasn't sure, but it seemed nice to, you know, you just put up something, a photo of the Canberra hub, and you get 19 people saying we like this. That's great. It shows that there's a bit of a connection there, even if it's not a super strong one, but it started to build. Adding more regional hubs. So as I said, I'm normally in Melbourne. The online person was also in Melbourne, so we could have been our mini hub or build something there and maybe have 6-8 people in Melbourne and just build it from there. One thing that we appreciate very much was that providing the recording straight away was probably a lot of extra work for Alicia and for the ESIP staff. So I don't know if there's a better way of doing it so that isn't so much work for you. But that's more a question for you. That's, you know, we acknowledge that was something that might need improvement. Any other comments from here?
Or comments online?
Not, they're just really comments.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Am I on?
Yeah.
This is Mark. Hi.
Yeah.
First off, kudos for doing this. I think it's brilliant. Roaring applause in the room.
It's the quality that counts, not the quantity.
Yeah. But just a few comments. Earlier, when you were talking about the move towards more hybrid and what RDA has been doing, what ESIP's been doing, and the importance of the platform, yeah, I really want to emphasize that. And what I've noticed with both RDA and ESIP, so RDA uses Whova and ESIP uses KikoChat, there was definitely a learning curve for those two. You know, just like you were talking about how people became Zoom savvy, it took a few meetings for people to become KikoChat savvy and to really take advantage of why it's there. I think initially people didn't even, it just seemed like an extra login, but there is actually value to it once you figure it out. Especially, and I haven't done this at all this meeting, if the people in person also are on the platform. My biggest comment though is, and you were getting to this at the end, is it sounds like it was pretty good for you all, that you could see the plenaries and then you could have your own discussions around the breakouts and so forth. And I do hope, and Susan's been constantly reminding people that to go back and look at the collaborative notes after you all have had your session. And but as you're pointing out, I don't feel like you all are as engaged. I don't see you as much. Like I was in a session when Leslie was there just individually on Zoom, and it was more present than like the group of you. Like right now I'm looking at just a postage stamp with little figures, you know, so I just hear a voice out of the, and that's probably what you're seeing of me too. So, you know, Zoom works better when it's all individuals up in front of their screen, so you can actually see, you know, facial expressions and so forth. I don't know how we address that or if we need to, but it seems a bit more one way. You know, I don't think we're getting as much back from you as we are giving to you, going the other way. Not that that's a criticism, but just, I don't think, you know, we're not feeling the Australians as much.
You're hearing us though.
Yeah, we're hearing you. Sorry. Yeah, but no, but I need to feel you, Leslie.
Oh,
that didn't come out quite. That did not come out right. So to that last point, though, you have these ideas: 2-minute lightning talks, poster session. Were you thinking that would just be internal? So you'd have your 2-minute lightning talks there internally, or would we get lightning talks on this end? And would we hear local speakers on this end?
Okay, so the lightning talks and the poster session, I think, were thought of doing locally, but there's no reason why we couldn't do that, actually, and why we couldn't have a combined lightning talks thing, right? Where some people from the main hub, I mean, not everyone, presumably, because I would expect you have more than 8 people, but, you know, we could have a, you know, connect with the main hub thing where, you know, people here talk for 2 minutes each, and then we mix it up with people from the main hub talking for 2 minutes each, as long as that works time zone wise. That's the only caveat, I think.
Yeah. No.
But I don't see a reason why you couldn't do that. And I mean, that would broaden the whole thing. And if you then have a way of connecting with those other people, be it via Slack or via whatever, I think that could be a valuable thing.
Yeah, I agree.
So a local speaker, the idea was to have someone locally speaking, but being a part of the main program. So basically what we're doing right now, more of that. Not necessarily as a bot, but, you know, having more local content, both locally, but also feeding into the main hub.
Yeah,
I just like to comment,
that would help.
Mark.
Yeah.
That session that you and I were interacting in, I was actually doing that one from home.
Right.
Remember, like your third session was 7 a.m. for us, and that was too hard to get logistics into this building. So everyone just sat in the warmth of their hotel room or house and dialed in. It was your 4 p.m. session is the one where we actively interacted as a group.
Yeah, no, I get the time issues,
Yeah.
and yeah, we can't address that, and so I totally understand that. My comment was simply that when you were there as an individual, it felt more like you were present because I could see your face and so forth. There's just a bit more connection. So
yeah, we tried that in a breakout yesterday where we were 3 people sitting in a breakout room, but all 3 of us had our individual screens as well.
Oh,
so,
okay.
But we did show, like, we did move into the, like, we were visible to the room as 3 people, even though 3 small people, I think. But yeah.
The initial reason for me to join individually into the Zoom was to be able to use the chat.
Yeah, same.
But I appreciate your point that it really makes a difference whether you see individuals or stamps with little people.
Yeah. But I think that is something we could see if we have, you know, better cameras or whatever, whether there's something we can do about that.
Yeah. So, and actually, sorry, I forgot your name.
Debashish.
She made you all bigger. I can all see you sitting at the table, and that's already an improvement. But it's hard to do that when you got your slides up. But anyway, we don't have to beat this to death. Just a point I wanted to raise and I think like an owl might help, something like that. Yeah. Final comment, and this is maybe less relevant to ESIP because ESIP's international presence is small and it's largely in Australia. But like thinking about RDA, you said you all had virtual participants in your hub as well. Yep. So But one could see, I mean, you all could have had, I mean, if we were truly international, you could have had Japanese participants and Singaporean participants that are more friendly to your time zone. So I'm just curious, do the virtual participants on the Australia side, I think you mentioned this, they're feeling more engaged as well. It's not just the 8 of you in the room, and they participated in your discussions and all that good stuff as well.
Yeah, this is a sample size of 1, so it's not.
Oh, okay.
But
it worked.
But she was very happy because she said, look, if I sit here on in my office watching this, I do what everyone else does, which is watch it with half an eye and do other stuff. But this way she felt more like there was someone she could actually directly talk to, because of course it was a recording, so she couldn't interact with the real session, if you like, but she could interact with us, and she put stuff into chat and I then responded back, and we had a discussion afterwards with her. So that worked quite well. And she found it more engaging, she said.
I'll pass to you a sec. Because I have a quick comment. I really, really appreciated the Slack comments. This is Denise Hills. I appreciated it because it helped remind me. I mean, I probably am one of the more aware people that this was happening, but it was a way for me to feel a little bit more connected to you, even on a more social level. So I think building that and making it more two-way, like I should next time be more proactive in engaging you all in Slack. So, but thank you for doing that. I love this experiment, by the way.
That's great. Sarah?
Is it online?
Yeah, I guess one kudos again to you all for doing this. It seems like a really cool approach, and I would have loved to at least have a couple other people in the room with me during the meeting. I was going to say too, I was in the breakout with y'all yesterday afternoon, and I thought, yesterday afternoon my time, sorry, and I thought it was quite effective, and it was really interesting to have the perspective of the group there. I was going to build off something that Denise just said, and now I've forgotten it after I talked. One thing I was thinking, it could be cool to announce at the beginning of the meeting that that there is this hub, and we might see you in sessions and understand what you're doing, just so we could have a better sense of how to interact with you all. I wasn't on Slack, so I missed those interactions. I'll have to check that out next time. But yeah, this is a really cool approach. I guess one final thought I had was, we've tried doing even just a smaller version of this for some of our own internal to our agency meetings, and it's totally relied on someone volunteering and kind of taking the lead on setting things up and coordinating the logistics. It seemed like that was the case with you all as well. So I'm thinking, it could be cool to try something like this in my area, but I might have to be the one to do all the work myself, and I don't know if I have the time or if there's other folks that would be willing. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on ways to get folks excited to connect in outside of the main meeting space?
So I guess that's a question for everyone else here, because again, full disclosure, I actually have nothing to do with earth science or anything like that, but I'm interested in the meeting aspect. So I found some of the sessions were like, okay, I have no idea what they're even talking about. There were some sessions that I found really, really valuable for myself, but some were like, okay, I can listen to this, but it's not my core area at all. But it was fascinating to see how things worked as a mode of meeting, and how it worked differently from just being there as in just yourself in the hotel room, which is it was a good experience as well, but it was a different one. So I don't know, what would everyone else think?
I'd like to make one comment and apologise to the Australians, because I did drop the ball a bit. This did take a bit of organising, and we made the mistake of, I tried to get an organising committee, because due to family reasons that I had to drop out a little bit, and keeping the ball going. we did do a survey around February, March, and about 15 people said they wanted to be part of it, and that's probably only 6 of those people who answered the survey are in this room. And I feel if we'd have held it at Brisbane or we'd held it at Melbourne, you know, like people wanting to come provided we held it locally. So that's why we added the additional bit of experimenting with Rebecca being an outpost in Melbourne. And I'm confident if we were to do this again, we could definitely have side meetings, you know, spokes in Brisbane and Melbourne and get this to work. And seeing time's running on, I'd just like to, while Susan, Denise and Mark are in the room, without causing too much extra workload on all of us, would you like us to write up something about how we ran this meeting for ESIP's record? But what we would very much like to have added to that is Susan and Alicia on how much extra effort it took for them to make this work. But I think the simple model of just a small group, we were able to get the facilities free. Karina with AWS helped with the catering, so we didn't have to do additional costs over and above, because we got into a mess with Susan, sorry, not probably from my part, that we agreed anyone who came had to have a registration with Susan, but how do we charge those additional costs related to the meeting? So anyway, it's just over to you. Simply, would you like us to try and write something up that's a future reference for ESIP?
Yes, please. And I think this is Denise. I think Susan and Alicia would be happy to provide input on that. We did have, I see John's hand up, but I know Chris here in the room also had something that she wanted to share.
Can I just say one last thing to Sarah, because I don't think we've really answered her question. So you could start really, really small and just see if you can get a couple of colleagues and just sit in a meeting room, and, you know, someone maybe buys a box of bickies and maybe you have tea bags in your office or whatever, and just start from there.
Translate bickies.
Oh, sorry, biscuits, cookies. So ideally you could start really small and just provide a little bit, like if you invite someone from a different organization that maybe not everyone has met. So just, I guess my message is maybe start it really small and see what people think.
But if it's different time zones, that's the catch. Like, you know, Susan and Alicia providing us with the recordings. I mean, how many hubs can you provide that to? Because that's not going to be scalable.
Well, I mean, it doesn't make any difference.
Do it once.
Yeah, do it once, and then if there's 1 hub or 10, it doesn't really matter. Sorry.
John?
I think,
Chris
first.
Chris
first.
Okay. All right, so we can't.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll be brief. I'll be brief. Sorry, John. So Chris Stoner, AWS in the room. So I want to +1 to what Sarah just said, that we should have announced that there was a hub joining the meeting in the beginning. That way everybody knew that you guys were there, and we could kind of, I don't think I was in the play. No. Yes, but in the meeting at 4 o'clock, I don't know that we did. Yeah, so they were just like another virtual participant, which isn't probably what we should have done. Yeah. Right, but see, that I think we should have coordinated a little bit better. Like whichever one you were going to join live, we should have announced that you were going to be there and sort of treated you like you were in the room instead of just a giant virtual participant. Because then, you know, there's no way to interact with you easily and know that you guys were in the room to like have comments and feedback. Because I mean, you're there live. We want to take advantage of that, and I see that as a missed opportunity that we didn't. So +1 to what Sarah said. About like, you know, making it clear that you were there live when you were. And it's like 9,000 degrees in this room. And so we're all like kind of freaking out because the heat is on and it's summer here and really hot. And so, yeah, there's a bit of commotion in the room. Yeah, over to John.
I'll give you a -4 this morning, -4 Celsius this morning.
Freezing over here. Send us the heat.
All right, I'm going to build on a couple of things, but one of the observations you had earlier, and I hope you can all hear me, is that, you know, there's a limit to how many people you can really have in the room before it gets unwieldy. So, you know, I don't know how many people were planning to attend from the NOAA campus in Silver Spring, but it's a decent number. So one would as a group, we might think about, well, maybe have more than one hub in a location, depending on how many people we're planning to attend. That would actually enable people to move between different hubs if they're all within walking distance in Silver Spring, for example. Yeah, if you're the only person at the NOAA campus, well, that kind of sucks. Okay. What can you do? The other thing, though, that I observe is I'm sitting at home because it's now 8 at night, and y'all are still in your regular day in Seattle, and of course Australia's on yet another time zone. But if we thought that there was value in a hub continuing after regular hours, maybe that would make it better for the people who are attending outside of their regular hours because they're in a local meeting. Yeah, it's after hours. Okay, that's not ideal, right? But the other thing I want to ask is, yeah, a report back to ESIP, but maybe this is a place where we should have some codified guidelines for how to run a hub such that ESIP can take advantage of that in the best possible way. So what are ESIP's recommendations or needs? What do we need to take care of locally to meet those? What's the best way to do that? What are some hints about the AV, the room, the having an agenda and the bickies? You know, what are those best practices to make local hubs really have value for those who cannot attend in person?
I'm going to just jump on that for a second. This is Susan. John, that was said like a governance committee chair. I love it. For those of you who don't know, John is ESIP's governance committee chair, continuing next year also. I was just going to add real quickly, the point about the size of the hubs I think is really key. If we're going to write this up, I can work with Douglas Rao as well. This is not ESIP's first hub meeting that we have tried. We piloted it with Douglas and NOAA for the NCAI, the AI workshop. I can tell you our hubs were much bigger and it was much harder. This, thanks to Leslie and your organizing and your grassroots efforts in Australia, I think it made it a lot easier on us. The podded model that we did for NCAI had 20 people in one location, 30 to 35 in another, and then 100 in another. The 100 in DC, when it rained, if you know the DC area, people said, great, this is an online meeting. I'm going to stay home. I don't want to fight the traffic. And I had catering for 100 and I had 15 people in the room, which was a total waste. And then they managed to cut a line for the power for all of Howard University's campus. So we lost all power in the main hub location. And then the Wi-Fi in the Boulder location with 35 people also was glitchy. So my takeaway from our first time doing this was three times as many locations, 3 times as many issues and things to go wrong. So you guys have given me hope, and that the size and when you have the local organizers, you know, organizing themselves, that was much easier on us. So I think we can always constantly iterate and learn, and I'm glad that I didn't just say it can't be done. So, but we probably would add some comments on the size and the complexity that kind of sunk us in our first experiment.
So just a comment. So I think it's a great idea to build something like guidelines or best practices. I personally would be very reluctant to do that on our sample size of one hub and one event. So I think we can write up our learnings And then I think this needs to be built on, like over future meetings, either at ESIP or maybe even elsewhere. There's no reason to not do this elsewhere and then learn from that as well. So I'd be happy to be involved in that, but I don't think I'd want to say, you know, 10 is the right size, because it just appeared to us to work quite well. So yeah.
I agreed. I think that this leading practices document could be considered a living document that gets updated as we have more experiences with that.
Yeah.
What time is it?
Yeah, it's like we.
Yeah, it's time to quit.
Susan,
sorry, it's very warm in this room. Yeah. I think we're. Yeah.
So that these folks can introduce themselves to everybody here in Seattle.
So I would encourage you all who are on Slack, first off, introduce yourself in the Seattle 2025 Slack channel. Maybe we can also just set up a hub channel of some sort. Chris, I'm volunteering you to do that. I'm very good at volunteering other people. So look for that if you're already in Slack. Look for that soon, ish. Yes, yeah, we're all going to bolt from here because it's what, like, yeah, it is. It's like 35C in here. It's really unpleasant. So, but it's lovely to see you all.
Thanks for staying on that long. I just put up a last slide, and that was the main thing I wanted to talk there about, was the time zones thing, and maybe experiment with something where we can actually have more sort of structured feedback to the sessions with a bit more awareness of what we're doing. And maybe even have 24-hour conferences, but that's not for this time.
Yeah. And I know we've been reminding session conveners that there will likely be comments in some of their sessions after the close of their session. So hopefully they are looking, but I don't think there's yet two-way conversation on those. So,
would it be possible to save the Slack from this? Not the Slack, sorry, the chat from this meeting.
Yeah, it will.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
That'd be fantastic.
Just put it in the session folder. We can pick it up there.
Yeah, it'll probably get dropped into the session notes. That's usually what we've been doing with that.
That would be fantastic.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Thanks. I'm gonna go find some place much cooler than here.
Don't melt.
Thank you, everyone.